In this section, we'll talk about sharing libraries. It is important to understand what kind of libraries we're talking here. Basically, common code that multiple microservices may be using. Something like a library for talking with a database is a good example. So there is the one key rule for sharing libraries, and it is avoiding coupling. Basically, avoid coupling at all cost. If you spot that your sharing code is coupling services, you're probably doing something, well, not necessarily incorrect, but something different than standard, common dependency on a third-party library. So how can you tell that you're introducing coupling? Well, first of all, if you require to run the exact same version of a specific library across multiple microservices, then you may be coupling things. Definitely, if you bring a necessity for coordinating deployments, then you're talking about one of these libraries that actually couple services rather than the ones that are safe to share. So if you manage to avoid all this coupling, you may think of it as something different than sharing code. You're basically depending on a third-party library, like you do on libraries in any sort of software development, and that's good. That's the good way to think about it. It's basically two or more microservices depending on the same library, but not coupling. So just to be clear, here are some examples of things that often looks like they're shared, but they're completely safe and okay. Let's say you're dealing with a third-party software like Apache Kafka, and you're using similar or the same libraries for talking with that. That would be completely fine. Or we're talking about your persistence layer, and you have a library for dealing with that, like Hibernate. Again, that's just normal dependency on libraries. That's perfectly fine. Maybe you using some JSON processing libraries because your microservices are depending on Node, JavaScript, or something like that. That's all fine. So just to summarize this lecture, you want to avoid coupling at all cost, and if you spot signs of coupling, such as needing to coordinate rollouts of a library, then be very careful and maybe think a bit more about how you're using this library. We'll talk about that in another lecture. And of course, be pragmatic. The key importance here is to do what makes sense and make sure that you follow good architecture principles, and rather than just trying to stop any sharing for the sake of sharing.